What is the most embarrassing thing that has happened to you when meeting someone for the first time? One day at work I stepped on a beehive, resulting in a medium-sized swarm of bees to furiously rage up through my pants leg. Fast forward 30 minutes and I wake up in the ER hooked up to an IV with MD examining my nether bits which had swollen to approx the size of ripe grapefruits. We had a good laugh. Then he asked why I had listed his daughter as my emergency contact. And that's the first time I met my girlfriend's dad. Story 2. I was matched with a temp job with a high-end real estate firm in my area several months back. During my initial interview with the office controller, she informed me that she and Emily, one of the head agents, were both pregnant and actually had the same due date. Turns out there were 2 agents named Emily. I didn't meet the pregnant one first, I just met the fat one. My congratulations and inquiries about name and sex were not well received. I'm blushing just thinking about it. Story 3. I semi-regularly work with groups of kids, and one of the things we emphasize with the kids is that it is important to make eye contact with adults when you are talking to them. So, whenever a kid in my group is talking to me and not making eye contact, I will interrupt him and point to my eyes to remind him. But, the other day I was greeted by a fellow adult for the first time and as we shook hands he didn't make eye contact, so out of habit I pointed to my eyes to make him look at me. He was completely weirded out and everything was awkward after that. Story 4. Let me paint the picture in words for you guys. The year was 1997. I was in the 2nd grade and after watching a lot of late-night episodes of The Wonder Years, I wanted my own Winnie Cooper. I knew exactly who I wanted, but just needed to find a way to impress her. One day the scenario was perfect. We were in gym class, playing foursquare and basketball. The foursquare ball bounces up a set of stairs so I go up to get it, while her basketball rolls to the bottom of the stairs. I for a split second feel like a superhero and think she will think I'm a magician if I walk on her basketball. Not ever taking a physics class before, I step on it, and it rolls. I fall down and break my arm in 2 places and cry all the way to the nurse. Had a cast for 12 weeks. The next time I saw her was at the town's pool about a year later. I wanted to impress her by diving off the diving board. I did a belly flop and got a bloody nose. Story 5. I was tired and distracted at work. My boss comes over with a new colleague. This is Daniel. This is the new guy, Jack. I get up and splash coffee all over the guy. I had forgotten I had a cup in my right hand when I was trying to shake hands. Story 6. When I was a freshman in high school, I joined the track team. There was this extremely attractive senior girl on the team that nearly everyone had a crush on. We all just secretly admired her from afar as we went about practice. One day after school, we ended up walking toward the field at the same time. I awkwardly walked near her trying not to look over. After a minute or so, she noticed me and started up a conversation. "Hey, you're on the track team, right?" she said. I was overwhelmed that she was talking to me. "Yes," I said, looking straight ahead. "You're Johnny, right?" I was not Johnny. Johnny was another freshman. "No," still looking straight ahead. "Oh, sorry. What's your name then?" I was nervous. It was all made worse by how nice she was being to me. I wanted to stay and run at the time. "I don't know," I heard myself saying. It's not that I blanked on my name or anything. Of course, I knew my own name. I just didn't know how to answer. I really wished my name was Johnny at that moment. And then after I had said I don't know, I realized how silly I must have seemed. "You don't know your own name?" she asked and laughed. "No," I said and ran away. She never tried to talk to me again. Story 7. When I was doing charity work in Albania aged 17, I met a local man who was to show us around a school in need of help. Upon being introduced I put my hand out to shake. He merely looked at me quizzically. I was confused by this and moved my hand to indicate a shaking action. Perhaps it wasn't such a common custom in Albania? Maybe I was being rude. Why wasn't he shaking my hand? After about 15 seconds of this I looked down and noticed that he had no arms. Story 8. Meeting my potential boss for the first time. I had a cup of tea in a saucer that had just been passed to me in one hand. There was nowhere and no time to put it down before I was introduced to the man who would be my boss if I got the position. I shook his hand and he held on to it for an uncomfortably long time. Unfortunately, out of nowhere I really violently sneezed. I tried to turn away but only succeeded in spilling my hot tea down his trousers and getting snot all over his shoulder and jacket. Story 9. I was about 13 and my neighbor was 7 and our families were meeting for the first time and we both said hello to each other. Then he said, "Want to see something cool?" And I said sure. Then he proceeded to pull his pants down and show me a freckle on his balls. Family was right next to us and everything and no one noticed. Haunts me to this very day. Story 10. I met a lovely girl at a party several years ago and we really hit it off. After about 30 minutes of conversation and flirting, it came up in conversation that I went to the same middle school as her. The party wasn't in the same city as the middle school. We went back and forth telling stories about that school, and after a few rounds came back to me talking about the nastiest teacher I have ever had. One day the teacher brought in a guitar and sang folk songs as a treat to the students. I know that actually sounds like a nice thing to do, but trust me, this was the most evil teacher. We all laughed at her and she stopped playing. That was the short version of the story I told the girl. The last thing the cute girl said to me was, "Yeah, I remember that." My mom came home and wouldn't stop crying. Story 11. I woke up and my roommate's incredibly attractive sister was standing near my bed. He wasn't in the room and my sleep-deprived brain thought the best thing to say was I didn't order any services, but I'm not going to refuse them. I was 19, she was 16. She giggled and my roommate came in from the other room and glared at me. "This is my sister." I ducked back under the covers, mortified. Story 12. I moved into a new place with 2 housemates. The girl housemate was overseas, so I didn't get to meet her until after I'd moved in. It was about 11 p.m. one night and I cruised downstairs to the kitchen for a late snack in my tighty-whities. Sure enough, I hear a key in the front door and she comes in. I don't know what was more disturbing, meeting her in just my underwear or the fact I was holding a raw carrot and tub of peanut butter at the time. Story 13. I started a new job last October. On my first day, I was not aware of the company's seating arrangements, and so simply took the first seat that appeared to be vacant. Turns out I had stolen by soon-to-be boss's seat, and he was too polite to tell me. The next day, I sat back down in the same place. My boss finally decided it was time to introduce himself, if only to redeem his stolen seat. He came up and said, "Hi, I'm your boss, and that's my seat," whereupon, mortified, I proceeded to blabber incoherent apologies and pleasantries. To add insult to injury, I managed to get his name wrong. All in all, not a great start. He later told me that he relished every second of that experience. Story 14. A friend of mine met a girl on crutches, and when the topic moved on to why she was on crutches, she told him that she was attacked by a shark. My friend pissed himself laughing. Then he realized no one else was laughing but staring daggers at him. She said, "I'm not joking." She really had been attacked by a shark and lost a lot of flesh and muscle on her leg. Story 15. My boyfriend and I were laying on his bed buck naked with the lights out and a fan on while watching Breaking Bad on an extremely hot summer day. All of a sudden we hear his sister walking down the stairs talking to someone, and since her bedroom was next to his we didn't think anything of it. Next thing we know, she comes storming in and turns on the lights with my boyfriend's soon-to-be sister-in-law because she wanted to meet me. I still blush uncontrollably when I think about it. Story 16. I had just moved to a new town and was getting on the bus to go to school. This particular bus was packed so every seat was filled, often had people standing. I sat down next to a girl in one of those 2-seaters. She was against the window. She starts to go on about what she did last night for like a good 10 minutes. I'm just sitting there nodding, reacting to what she says and paying attention. After this goes on for a while, I figure I should at this point introduce myself. "Oh hey BTW, my name is Vinny. I was talking to my friend in the seat across from you." Story 17. This happened to me about 2 years ago while I was in college. It was the start of the school year and I was moving into a new house with about 5 other guys. In the summer I have really bad allergies, so I use a neti pot. For those of you who are unfamiliar with neti pots, they can rinse out your nasal cavity with water. Now once in a while water and get trapped and leak out of your nose later. So anyway, here I am on move-in day and I had just rinsed my sinuses. I went upstairs to meet everyone and their families. We were standing around introducing ourselves, when I swear to God my nose opened up and the heavens rained from it. Everyone just stood there and looked at me. My shirt in a line going from my chest to my crotch darkened with water. That was pretty hard to explain. Story 18. Okay, got one that happened just a few weeks ago. I went to my buddy's place to play some board games and have a few drinks. 2 important things to know. I am extremely claustrophobic and we live in Hong Kong. My buddy's living room is about 70 square feet. There were 7 of us there, 2 of which I had met that evening, all having a good time and drinking up. I started to feel abnormally hot and very uneasy about my surroundings. I went into the washroom and washed my face, and whilst doing so, started shaking really badly. If you're claustrophobic, I had the trapped feeling, but it was worse than I'd ever experienced before. It being like 90 degrees and humid as hell didn't help. I walked out and took a seat next to my girlfriend, and the next thing I know, I'm puking in the toilet. Now, I didn't have much to drink and I was quite confused at this point. How the hell did I get there? Apparently, I sat down and told her I wasn't feeling well, then my eyes rolled back and I nosedived into the table. As my friend was trying to pick me up, I managed to puke all over his living room as well as hitting my newfound friends. Story 19. After an evening of heavy drinking, I spent the night at the house of a girl I had just started dating. She lived with her mom, parents divorced. I awoke in the middle of the night having to take a piss, and after checking that the coast was clear, I scampered naked down the hall to the bathroom. I quickly returned and jumped into bed only to be met with, "Whoa, what are you doing?" I was frozen with confusion until the girl opened the door and revealed that I had crawled in bed with her mother. Turns out I made a wrong turn on my way back and entered the mother's bedroom across the hall. I covered myself the best I could and jumped out of her bed as they both burst out laughing. Thankfully they were good-natured about it. Although, I do hope it was the situation that they were laughing at. Story 20. Match.com. First date with the guy. We decide to go cheap cause we're both broke and have a movie night at my place. So he gets here, I get him a drink and I end up making him laugh so hard it comes out his nose and sprays all over my carpet. I try to take that as a compliment Lamau. Then homeboy decides it's time for a smoke break. I tell him we can smoke on the balcony. He gets all excited, "You have a balcony," jumps up and rushes over to the door, opens it and runs directly into the screen. Not only does he run into the screen door which is so obviously there, he runs into it so hard that it shoots out of the frame and launches off the balcony onto my neighbor's porch below, where my elderly neighbor is smoking a joint, which really just added to the oddity of the situation. My neighbor, whom I have never spoken to, ended up passing up the screen door. Stupid thing is still broken. That's right, the guy didn't even help me fix it. And we dated for like 9 months. Story 21. A few years ago I was out drinking with some friends. After a few drinks, the conversation moved off the usual highbrow topics into boisterous jokes when my friend's little sister walks into the bar. After the usual circle of introductions it came my turn. Just as she turned for my introduction, I took a big drink of my beer the same time as one of my friends made a crude joke. Needless to say, trying to laugh with a mouthful of beer didn't go down too well. In fact, I basically inhaled my beer, choked, and half vomited/coughed up the beer, splattering the poor girl from head to toe trying to clear my lungs. I never saw her run out the bar. I was trying to breathe air again. Never did see her again after that. Story 22. I went out on a coffee date with a guy who I really wasn't getting along too well with. He asked me if I'd like to sit in his car after we left to chat a little, and since I honestly had nothing better to do I thought sure, why not? Maybe he's less weird and full of himself when he's outside of a Starbucks. Halfway through our very boring conversation about himself, he blinked rather rapidly and kind of made a pondering look like he had just had an epiphany about whether or not sunbeds caused cancer. Then he looked at me and said, "Would you mind rolling your window down?" I said, Why do you want me to roll my window down?" He said, "Because I just farted and it really smells." I said, "Oh." And rolled my window down and just sort of stared at the dashboard while our minds wrapped around the fact that the car was now the bog of eternal stench. I shook his hand and said I had to go and he said okay then, and I never saw him again.